Since 2014, the condition of minority and marginalized groups in India has become progressively worse. But there has also been visible support and solidarity from both domestic and international groups. These voices of dissent that criticizes government policies and lawlessness have faced legal pushbacks, including sedition charges and media trials. No institution or individual is immune to this repression. Human rights activists, lawyers, journalists, students, NGOs, news agencies, you name it. We spoke to Kshama Sawant, an international figure, politician and economist. Kshama has served on the Seattle City Council from 2014 to 2024. During her tenure, her office expressed solidarity with various minorities and marginalized groups. The Seattle City passed resolutions against laws like CAA and have expressed support for the farmers' protest in India. Additionally, she played a crucial role in introducing an anti-caste discrimination bill in the city of Seattle. Ms. Sawant has stated that she has faced challenges related to travel to India, including visa denials, and is unable to visit her ill mother. In this interview, Kshama Sawant will discuss her experience in activism and her perspectives on the current situation. So, thank you so much, Kshama Sawant, for joining and agreeing to speak with Maktoob. I want to begin with asking, since your role has been very monumental in anti-caste bill that you introduced in the Seattle city. So, before we talk about that more, I would like to ask, what is the law-making process, how different it is as such for our viewers to understand how it is different back in the States. So to sort of identify, and you realize that there is a caste problem, there's a caste discrimination that is happening in workplace. So how do you identify a problem and then sort of take it towards making into a law which should be enforced? So can you just tell a little bit about that?
Yes, I think what has happened in the United States in the last 25 years or so is really a confirmation, I think, of what B.R. Ambedkar had predicted in his time, that as the Indian community, especially the Hindu community, moves around the world, starts living in different places on different continents around the world, that the caste system will also spread along with it. I mean, my interpretation is similar, but except I'm coming at it from a Marxist analysis of capitalism, which says that capitalism is being a system of economic exploitation by a few of the many, a few billionaires exploiting billions of people across the world, that such a system requires that it divide up among the exploited people into different categories so that they fight amongst themselves, so that it's a classic divide and conquer strategy, which is the only way you can explain why the caste system still lives on 2000 years later. You would think it is anachronistic, that it doesn't fit with the modern era, but it does, in a similar way that racism against Black people in the US still persists. Misogyny and sexism still persists on every continent, whether you talk about India or the United States. So I think it's a similar logic that explains why the caste system also pervades not only in the United States, but also in the UK, Australia, and so on. And what we see is, obviously, it's a fact that the caste system and caste-based discrimination in the workplace or in other situations affects only a small minority of the population. For that minority, it is important. So in Seattle, we have a progressive system of laws just because this city has had a vibrant labor movement in some of the earlier decades. And because of that, there was a pre-existing law against discrimination in the city. So my office and the movement we built didn't create that discrimination law, but what we fought for and won is to include that discrimination based on caste is also illegal. So, in other words, the pre existing law said that discrimination on the basis of political views or gender or religion is outlawed. Similarly, what we fought for is to include caste as part of that. But I should explain to your viewers and to my fellow community members in India, my home country, that it required a real fight to win this because we faced massive opposition from the Hindu fundamentalist organizations like the Coalition of Hindus of North America and the Hindu American Foundation, and a lot of opposition from the Hindu right wing people who were very opposed to this legislation, and we had to build a movement to win it.
Yeah, I mean, that brings me to my next question. Uh, you say that there has been a certain level of backlash from the people of you should from the upper caste Hindus that are there who have sort of in a way, I mean, I was reading one of the pieces that wrote about you on Op India, like who is Kshama Sawant who has been recently denied a visa. And in that interview, in that little piece, it was said that she is sort of trying to give a bad name to India, by telling that caste is sort of very pervasive even within American society, even within like in the States, it's being taken down. So how does when you see that there's a certain opposition from the people from the upper caste in Hindu. So how have you like how do you deal with it when you have this certain kind of opposition from the Hindus or upper caste Brahmins who are sort of living there within the states?
Yes, first of all, I would say I think we have to think about, what is it that might give India a bad name. I don't think the fight against caste discrimination or caste oppression gives India a bad name. It is the existence of caste discrimination and caste oppression, and especially in India, caste based violence against oppressed castes that gives India the bad name. So, if people are concerned actually in reality about that, then that is how I would address it. Although I should say a lot of these objections that the Hindu right wing brought up that, oh, this is giving India a bad name. This is not an honest objection on their part. Their real objection to this law is because they believe in the caste system. They are, as you said, dominant caste Hindus, and they find it an affront that such a law would be made. It is similar to right wing white people who opposed the civil rights legislation, civil rights movement for Black rights in the 50s and 60s, and even before that. And if you look at the statistical evidence, it's very clear. I mean, there have been statistical studies that have been done of South Asian engineers, in the United States, South Asian workers, South Asian or other workers of Indian origin, so to say. And then what they have found in the statistical studies is that caste-based discrimination is indeed a statistically significant feature of their lives, meaning they get denied. So if you imagine if you're a tech worker and you are, typically you work in teams. Those of you who are watching who are tech workers, you will know what I mean. You have peers in your group, and then you have your different levels of bosses. So if some of your peers and your bosses are also of Indian origin and they happen to be of dominant caste, but you are of an oppressed caste, then it is a very common phenomenon for you to experience caste-based discrimination in the form of verbal slurs, insults, like offhand comments that are meant to be quote unquote funny, but they're meant but in reality they're insulting. And they also have, it's also even more serious than that, where some of the oppressed caste workers have been denied promotions, they are not invited to team meetings. So you see all of these things happening, and this has been statistically documented. That is why we decided, my office, my socialist city council office, and the activists around me, we decided to take this on. And I should also explain that we this bill that we fought for, it was in January and February of 2023. We won it in February 2023, but almost exactly three years prior to that, we won a landmark resolution that is in February of 2020. We won, we meaning my office and hundreds of rank and file activists around our office. We built a movement to win a resolution that condemned Narendra Modi and the Bharatiya Janata Party's CAA and RC citizenship laws, which we know are anti-Muslim, anti-poor, and deeply problematic. And we know actually, and Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have documented this, that those laws actually have themselves been used to crack down on dissent and have been used to revoke the OCI status, overseas citizenship of India status of various critics of the Modi regime like Atish Tasir and Ashok Swain and Natasha Kaul. My visa being denied, even though my mother is very ill and very old, is unfortunately not the only case. We have so many cases. In fact, Amnesty International has documented over 100 instances. So anyway, my point is that the legislation to ban caste discrimination was truly historic because it is the only one of its kind outside India. But even before that, we won a landmark legislation. Again, it was the first resolution of its kind condemning Modi's CA and NRC citizenship laws. And that was our first battle against the Hindutva element in the United States, because the Hindu right wing in the US fought hard against it. We had to fight to win this, and we had to fight this and we won this despite the opposition of the Democratic Party, which is mostly what is represented on the city council here.
Yeah, I mean, I was also watching one of the campaigns when you were sort of mobilizing people towards this anti-caste law that's been passed. I mean, one of the chants that says Seattle first, then nation, ban caste discrimination. So I mean, on that front, so what does it look like for more cities and more states to sort of adopt this law, and what has been the impact of the law since it's enforced? I know it's just been a year since this, or 2 years or that it has been passed, but what do you think is the impact, or how has it, like, sort of what are the changes that you see since the law is enforced?
Khurram, that is a very important question, because when we won this historic law, we said that we want this to spread, because we want this example to be taken not only across the United States but also internationally. And the truth is that when we won, that news went viral. And in fact, to win it itself, we had activists come to Seattle City Hall to fight for it, not only from around the Seattle area, but from across the United States and also from Canada. We had many community members from the Ravidasia community, Sikh people from Vancouver, from the Vancouver area, which is very close to Seattle, a few hours drive from here. We had many of them come here and join us, and it truly went viral. The news of us winning this legislation went viral, and in reality, it should have been followed up by victories in other places, but unfortunately that hasn't happened. And that's where I think very, very crucial political lessons need to be learned. Why did it not happen? So right after we won, actually literally weeks after we won, NGO leaders, including from an NGO called Equality Labs, they launched a campaign in the state of California to win a similar law on a state level. And California is arguably the most crucial state in the United States. So had we won that law in California, that would have been even more groundbreaking than what we won in Seattle. However, the leaders there, including the people from Equality Labs, unfortunately used a very, very bad approach. And that's why we need to learn. Why did Seattle win and why did California lose? That the reason is that there, the people who were leading the campaign there were very cozy with the Democratic Party politicians. They really believed that as long as they have nice sounding meetings, private meetings with the Democrats, and they have good relations with the Democratic Party, everything will be fine. The Democrats will support them. I mean, just to give context to your viewers, I mean, in the United States, we have mainly two parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The Republican Party is overtly right wing, so especially now under Trump. So I mean, they're not even making a pretense of standing up for people of color or, other oppressed communities, including oppressed caste people of Indian origin. But in California, you have a state legislature that has a Democratic Party governor, and the Assembly and the Senate, which are the two houses of the state legislature, they are both completely dominated by the Democratic Party, which is, almost 80% of members of both the Assembly and the Senate of the state of California are Democratic Party members. That's why I'm talking about the Democratic Party. The truth is that the Democrats and Republicans both represent the interests of the billionaire class and of the capitalist system. And so even when you have a legislation like this, which does not directly uh, deal with the profits of the billionaires, they don't like this type of legislation because it emboldens, if you win anything like this, it emboldens workers to win other things. And so that's not their preference. It's not the preference of the Democratic Party. The difference between the Democrats and Republicans is not that one of them stands for working people and another represents billionaires. No, that's not the case at all. I should be emphatic about this. They both represent the billionaire class. The difference is that the Democratic Party sometimes has progressive sounding rhetoric, but when you actually test them out, they will betray you. The Democratic Party betrays working people and oppressed people over and over and over again. And so whatever gains have been won for oppressed communities like women, like Black people, like any steps taken against Islamophobia, all of this has been because of ordinary people fighting back, creating movements on the streets, and so on. So in California, the people who led this campaign there, they refused to take the fighting approach that we did, meaning not putting your faith in the Democratic Party, which always betrays us. Like the same people who led the California effort, actually, we had invited them to be part of our effort in Seattle. And they did not agree with our approach. They wanted to have private meetings with the Democratic Party council members. They said, oh, let's not do a press conference. Let's not have a public announcement that will alert the Hindu right wing. What I said was that, look, the Hindu right wing is going to oppose us no matter what. So if we keep this secret, but then it comes to a vote, they will come and oppose us. Instead, we should recognize the truth that if you start having private meetings with the Democratic Party, they will quash any effort, in the back rooms, and you will be left with nothing at the end of the day, which is exactly what happened in California. Instead, what we did was proclaim the legislation from the rooftops. We held an amazing press conference where we brought everyone together and said, we're going to be fighting for this. And if the Democrats, and this was our message, we didn't beg the Democrats to pass this. That is not how you win victories for working people. We said, if the Democrats claim to be progressive, and if they vote no on this, then we will expose them for what they are, which is pro-Modi. If you claim to be against Trump, if you claim to be against the right wing, then you also have to be against Modi's attempts to, and the Hindu right wing's attempts to maintain the caste system. And so that's the approach we used. The people who led the effort in California, in Seattle, they also said things like, oh, let's not have Muslims come and be in the forefront of this movement, because if you bring Muslims as part of this, somehow that will anger the right wing. My response was categorical. The Hindu right wing is going to be against us no matter what. What we need to do is to build big solidarity in our movement, and everyone who wants to fight on this, we should bring them forward. We should not divide our own movement on the basis of who's Hindu, Muslim, or Christian. We brought everyone together. We even educated American workers, non-Indian American workers, about why they should support this, why labor unions should support this, because if you're against racism, then you should also be against the caste system, because you have to be against all oppression. So that's the approach we used. We put public pressure on the Democratic Party council members. There's 8 of them. I was one socialist. So They were forced to vote yes. That's how we won. Unfortunately, the leaders in California used a very wrong approach of being very cozy with the Democrats, and they ended up losing. And so this is a lesson for us.
In the last 10 years that you've been in the office, you've also been very vocal about things that are happening back home. You've seen post 2014 in India, things have also not been very easy. I mean, there's been lack of oxygen for minorities and marginalized people. They really can't exercise basic, ordinary daily life routine, can't eat the food of their choice. I mean, their very citizenship is kind of in jeopardy. There have been laws like there's been attempt like to introduce laws like CAA, and you also see farmer protests. So, like you said, you were talking about how Seattle City actually passed this resolution against the CAA law. And then you were also very vocal about the farmers' protests. So, do you think what is happening now with you, especially the whole visa issue that you're not being issued visa, whereas your mother is also not well, you have to visit her. So, do you think all of this are these like an attempts, like an attempt of a transnational repression? So, what do you have to say about that?
Yes, first of all, as you correctly said, Khurram, we also uh, expressed using our city council, my city council office, we stood publicly in solidarity with the farmers movement in India. In fact, we passed a resolution in December in solidarity with the farmers and condemning the Modi regime for trying to bring regressive policies that were in favor of agribusiness conglomerates and against the interests of poor farmers and also agricultural laborers. And it was incredible to see the unity in that effort in India, and also with the workers in India and the labor union members in India joining them in this type of what we would call Kisan Mazdoor Ekta. That was all very, very important, and we were proud to stand in solidarity with them. I have no doubt in my mind that this is political retaliation, as you said, transnational political retaliation. And it's also not a suspense in the sense that I don't know if how many of your viewers would know this, but when my husband and I went to the consulate the last time, when we had we were getting the outcome of our emergency visa, which was the third visa I had applied for, the previous two had been rejected. They said that I was on a reject list. I don't think that consulate officer was supposed to tell me. I think he messed up because they don't want to admit this publicly. But whatever, maybe in a moment of
I remember
unguarded arrogance.
they might have said that certain individuals are not allowed. I mean, so there is this one of the
Yeah, they might. Yeah, they might. I think they would prefer to speak in very innocuous sounding, sanitized sounding language, but perhaps in a moment of unguarded arrogance, because the guy was really arrogant, he ended up admitting that my name is on a reject list. In other words, a blacklist. Reject list is a blacklist. So it's very clear. And even if he hadn't said this, admitted this to me, it was very clear. Why otherwise would they deny me a visa? My mother is 82 years old. She's in very frail health. Her doctor and her hospital have made it very clear that she's unable to undertake air travel and that I need to go and visit her. So clearly, this is vindictive retaliation on the part of the Modi regime. And as I said, it's not an isolated instance. We see so many people having their not only visas denied, but also long term visas revoked, their OCI status revoked. So you see the crackdown on dissent that has been documented by various human rights organizations. And in fact, it's important for your viewers to know that it's not only the Modi regime that is retaliating against me for the stand that we took when I had my office. I was on, as you said, I was on the city council for 10 years. In reality, this is what happens when you uh, unambiguously fight for working people, oppressed people, the poor, expect that the ruling class and their political representatives are going to try and retaliate against you. And your only protection is to build movements so that you're not isolated yourself. But also on the flip side, you cannot win any victories for working people if you run scared. If leaders of movements run scared, like if I had won the city council election, which my first election victory was in 2013. But after winning that, had I said, oh, I don't want to make an enemy out of the Democratic Party and the CEOs of Amazon and Starbucks, and I don't want to make an enemy out of the Modi regime, I'm going to play it safe. If I had used that approach, we would have won nothing for working and oppressed people. The reason our record of 10 years of a socialist on the Seattle City Council, the reason that example is unparalleled in our times is because we took the exact opposite approach, which is boldly building movements of working people, or mobilizing and organizing working people, thousands of working people, to win victories that were thought of as impossible. So one of the first victory we won, and again this was a historic victory, was in 2014. Less than 6 months after I took office, we made Seattle the first major city to win a $15 an hour minimum wage. That wage immediately lifted 100,000 of Seattle's workers out of poverty. I mean, this was a phenomenal victory. After we won, and to your point from your earlier question, the 15 victory went nationwide. Many other cities won $15 an hour. And in fact, in this last election, the state of Missouri, for example, that elected Trump, the same working people also voted in favor of a $15 minimum wage. So in other words, $15 an hour is still winning victories. As part of that victory, we won inflation adjustments. And so today, the minimum wage in Seattle is $20.76, which is by far the highest minimum wage in the country. But we did not win this by me running scared from the billionaire class or me trying to make friends with them. No, we won this precisely because we said capitalism is class war against the working class. And so you don't actually choose whether you're in this war or not. It is war against you by the wealthy who are stealing from you. And so your only choice is, are you just going to cower or are you going to fight back? And that's what we chose to do. We chose to get organized and fight back. And we won the $15 an hour minimum wage. And then we also won many other historic victories like the Amazon tax, which is a tax on the wealthiest people in the city to fund a massive expansion of affordable housing. This in Seattle, the rents are insanely high, and working people and poor people are pushed out of the city because they can't afford it anymore. So we won the Amazon tax in 2020, the same year that we won the CA&RC condemning resolution. And this tax, as I said, taxes wealthy people and generates funds to build publicly owned affordable housing, meaning the rents stay low. And that tax, last year alone, it raised $450 million. This is huge. It's almost $500 million for affordable housing. This is unheard of. So you can imagine that if we win these kinds of victories, it will make you enemy number one of the ruling class. So it is not only the Modi government that is retaliating against me. I have faced retaliation, and our movement has faced retaliation repeatedly from the US ruling class. In 2021, there was an attempt to recall me, meaning, to send me out of office. We won against that. We have never been defeated. But my point is that it is always a brutal onslaught from the ruling class against anybody who dares to fight. And these are not attacks against me personally. By attacking me, the Modi government and the US ruling class are really trying to undermine the movement itself, undermine working people as a whole. So we cannot accept it. We have to continue getting organized. And in that spirit, actually, we have called for a protest on March 22nd against this type of visa denial.
I'm sure. I hope that your visa issue gets resolved, and best wishes to your mother as well. I hope you get to meet her very soon. Thank you so much for talking to Maktoob, and hope to meet you in better circumstances, perhaps when you're here in India. So thank you
I
so
would
much.
love that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much.